Hello Year 10, welcome to Lesson 3 of Coasts. Today's lesson is all about the importance of protecting our coastlines. You're going to need paper, pen and pencil. Your first activity is our quickfire round, so pause the video here and have a go at these 5 questions based on knowledge from Lesson 1 and 2. So our coastlines are really important multi-use resources. It's estimated that around 3 million people live on the coast in the UK, whereas around 40% of the world's population live around the coast. In 2016, seaside tourism was worth £8 billion to the UK economy, with people making 13.7 million seaside trips just that year. There's a real importance of shipping and trade to the UK's economy, so a large number of ports around the coast which are really diverse in terms of size and type of cargo handled. And in 2018, 483.3 million tonnes of cargo was transported around the UK coastline. Pause the video here and see if you can list a variety of different ways that we use our coastline. We have seen in Lesson 2 that some areas of the UK coastline are more vulnerable to erosion than others because of their geology. But also some coastal communities are more vulnerable than others. And this is because of poverty. And poverty means that the local council has fewer resources available to reduce the threat of and the impacts of sea level rise. And this might be because a higher proportion of people claim benefits in that community, or there is a fast turnover of people through economic migration, or a higher proportion of poor quality housing in that community, or perhaps that community solely relies on tourism, which results in seasonal employment and therefore low incomes. Skegness in Lincolnshire is one of the better known seaside resorts in England. It's situated within the largely rural areas and has poor road and rail links. So Skegness is one of the largest concentration of caravan parks in Europe, and some static caravans are the permanent homes for retired residents and people on low incomes. How would this area be affected by coastal flooding? Great Yarmouth in Norfolk is a medium-sized port and is an important seaside resort. It's had a high proportion of elderly and retired residents. Unemployment rates are higher in Greater Yarmouth than in the rest of the east of England. The economy of the port is in decline, and the nearby North Sea gas fields have begun to reduce production. So, how would coastal flooding affect this area? In communities like this, local people may lack the funds to make structural changes to their homes. They may not be able to afford to move away. Coastal, local authorities with areas of high deprivation, high poverty, may not be able to afford the resources for coastal flooding. Government policy means that there is an ever-increasing expectation that individuals and communities should help themselves to prepare for sea level rise and coastal flooding. For disadvantaged residents, the threat is simply not a major issue to them at this moment in time, as they have many other things to focus on. Pause the video here and see if you can think of reasons why local authorities may not be able to afford the resources needed for coastal flooding. Often coastal communities expect the government to help protect them from erosion and coastal floods. However, managing the coastline is very expensive, and there is no legal duty for the government to build coastal defences to protect people or their property. It is the responsibility of the local authority, the local councils in England and Wales, to prepare a shoreline management plan for their section of the coast. In deciding whether or not to build a new coastal defence or repair old ones, the local council needs to weigh up the benefits of building the defences against the costs, so the advantages and disadvantages. They may consider factors such as how many people live in the area, how many people are threatened by erosion, and what is their property worth. How much would it cost to replace the infrastructure, such as the roads or the railway lines or the bridges, if they were washed away? Are there any historic or natural features that should be conserved and protected? And do these features have an economic value? So, for example, do they attract tourists to the area? Here we can see the 4 options that are usually considered on a shoreline management plan. If you pause the video and then you can draw out the table and then press play again to listen carefully whilst you make some brief notes about each of the 4 options. So the do nothing option is do nothing and allow gradual erosion. This is an option if the land has low economic value, so lower value than the cost of building sea defences, because those sea defences can be really expensive. Hold the line is option 2. Here you could use hard engineering such as timber or rock groins and concrete sea walls to protect the coast. Or you could add extra sand to a beach to make it more effective at absorbing wave energy. But you have to remember that sea walls cost about £6,000 per metre, and sea level rise means that such sea defences need to be constantly maintained and will eventually need to be replaced with larger structures. And so for this reason, hard engineering is usually only used where the land that is being protected is really valuable. Retreat the line is option 3. You could punch a hole in an existing coastal defence to allow the land to flood naturally between low and high tide to an intertidal zone. Sand dunes and salt marshes provide a natural barrier to flooding and help to absorb wave energy. They adapt naturally to changing sea levels through a process of erosion and deposition further inland. The last option is advance the line. You could build new coastal defences further out into the sea. So almost like the line of the UK has increased. The UK has become bigger. This requires a huge engineering project and would be the most expensive option. The advantage would be that new flat land would be available that could be used as a port or an airport facility. So managed realignment is an example of retreating the line, which is an option available on all shoreline management plans. But it is a controversial choice. In 2014, the UK's largest realignment sea defence scheme was completed at Medmerry in West Sussex. This scheme has effectively redrawn the UK coastline 2 kilometres further inland. The scheme began with the destruction of the existing sea wall, allowing some land to flood naturally at high tide. The newly flooded area will be able to absorb the energy of the waves and will reduce the risk of coastal flooding. A new 7-kilometre seawall has been built further inland, and the Environment Agency says that homes are much better protected. However, at £28 million, the scheme was not popular with everyone. So during the winter of 2014 to 15, there were many weeks of heavy rains and storms. However, one of the holiday home villages, they said that it's been the first winter in years that they haven't had to deal with surface flooding, and that rainwater drains into the new marshes beautifully. And they've said that tourist numbers are up as well. And other benefits have been to the farming. So cattle will be grazed on salt marsh, and this produces a really strong flavour of salt marsh beef, and that's quite expensive to buy. But there are some disadvantages to this as well, and some of the local residents have complained that land is permanently lost in this scheme. So once you give the land to the sea, there's no getting it back. And 3 productive farms producing oilseed rape and winter wheat have had to be lost to the sea as part of this scheme as well. And even though the Environment Agency said that homes would be better protected, some residents in those 2014 storms still experienced flooding. So pause the video here and look back over the information. Decide yourself whether you agree with this scheme or not. And what are your reasons for that? Well done, Year 10. So we've come to the end of lesson 3, which was all about the importance of protecting our coastlines. So what we would like you to do now is look back over your fact booklet for weeks 1, 2 and 3. Try to learn the facts from week 3 and use those in our quiz for next lesson.